In three, two, one. Well, guys, welcome to our new normal. When we first started this whole distance learning thing, we were supposed to be back in school this week, and things have definitely changed. I really miss all of you guys. I miss kind of just being a part of your daily life and seeing you guys. I'm definitely very busy at my house with my little girls. They think that this is the greatest time of their lives to have both me and my wife home on a daily basis. Our baby boy has not yet been delivered. The due date is April 25th, and we're kind of on the countdown time. So maybe in the next 7 to 10 days, we'll have ourselves a brand new baby boy. I'll make sure I post some pictures for you guys and give you an update on that. I don't think that it should really disrupt our online class in terms of me having to be at the hospital. Hopefully, I can do a good job of having everything preloaded into my Google Classroom so things just kind of post. If there's any delays, I'll definitely let you guys know. One thing that I'm really happy with is the amount of students who are doing a great job with their work. I know most of the work is kind of feels a little bit like busy work. A lot of the work has to do with just kind of reading comprehension or just kind of staying up to date with certain assignments. We're not going to be able to do as much as I usually do with Romeo and Juliet. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with things that we would do in class. But it is important for us to go through this final unit and finish the school semester as strong as possible, even though we're finishing the school year in a very weird way. So thank you guys. I really do appreciate all of your effort in this. You're looking at our Google Classroom. This just happens to be period 2. I wanted to go through a couple of things about how each of these weeks are going to roll out for you while we do Romeo and Juliet. And I kind of wanted to show you, some things and talk you through it. And then I'll give you a recap on Act 1, which is what you're supposed to be reading this week. So first things first, like I said to you guys in our post here about our welcome back post about on Mondays, I'm going to post the audio file. If you choose to use the audio file, it's up to you. The questions thread, the assignment for the week. On Wednesdays, I'm going to post notes. And then today, I'll be posting my weekly recap of what we read and answering, kind of recurring questions and things that people were looking for clarification on. So if you go up to classwork, first things first, the audio files. So these are all the audio files. If we were in class, I would do a combination of having us read as a class or have the audio files playing. The audio files are there for you, completely optional. Some people were asking questions about citing their answers because they just listened to the audio file. Please listen to the audio file and have your book out at the same time. If you want to just read, just read. I don't recommend just listening to the audio file. I recommend having both there. It'll make answering questions or doing any types of notes, it'll make those go a lot quicker rather than having to just listen to the audio file and then go back through the book. It's your call on how you want to do it, but I would definitely use the audio files as a companion. So I'll post all the audio files for each scene. If you have issues with the audio files, again, they're just optional. You can go ahead and read directly from the book if you want. The assignment. So here's our assignment. 13 people have already been able to finish that up for this week. Please make sure you get that done sometime over the weekend if you haven't finished it yet. This is just for period 2. Our assignment is here. A couple of things. Page 396 to 399. Like normal, I made a copy for you so you can directly type on this. I do prefer if you type in blue font because everything that I've posted is in black, and then it just makes it easier for me to read. So I appreciate that. Do your best to cite in parenthetical citations and continue to work on that. And make sure that you do that by scene and act and line number. There was a question about citing the prologue. If you're going to cite the prologue, you just write in the parenthetical citation prologue a period, and the line number. You don't have to write act or scene because it's the prologue. Another aspect in terms of getting our work done. So on Wednesdays, I'm going to post the notes. And some people were a little bit confused about the notes. They were wondering, how do I complete this assignment? You need to mark up your textbook. So this would be Monday morning, you get your assignment, you do your reading over a couple of days. You can start working on the actual assignment. On Wednesdays, I'm going to post the notes for the act. And then, for example, we have Act 1, Scene 1. So go to page 377. It's the opening prologue. And then this, I will tell you what is important about that opening section. So I would go to your book. I would go ahead and bracket the prologue. And then I would put the note in for this sets the scene for the entire play. It gives you some backstory about what's going on, and then I would move on to the next slide. The next slide is turn to page 3 or stay on page 377. We're going to be analyzing dialogue and stage directions. I give you an overview of what the dialogue is. Dialogue is a conversation between characters, what the stage directions provide. I tell you to annotate the lines 1 through 3. This is what you should be looking for. And then I provide the answer to lines 1 through 11 by telling you that Samson and Gregor are eager to quarrel, which is a fight, because they brought their swords and shields with them, boasting about fighting. So I would go through a second read and mark up your book about different areas that I have put together as important sections that you should look through. So Act 1, Scene 2 on page 384. These are important lines 16 through 19. And what the note you need to put for those lines is that Lord Capulet is showing love towards his daughter Juliet, so on and so forth. So that's what I'm looking for in terms of the notes, and I will post the act notes on Wednesday. So you have a couple of days to do the reading of the play. You have a couple of days to mark up your book and do that on Wednesday. And then hopefully you should feel pretty good, and then watch this video on Friday to make sure that you guys are in a good spot. So that's what I'm looking for in terms of how I'm going to post. So I'll post the assignment and I'll post the notes, and I'll do that during the week in the audio files. The questions. I wanted to provide you guys an area to ask questions as things were kind of popping up. I don't think you need to actually turn them in. Once you turn them in, you can't continue typing, but I'm also not positive if I see them if you don't turn them in. So we'll have to kind of work our way through that. So maybe write down questions that you have as you read, and then post all of your questions at once, and then click turn in so I can see them, rather than just trying to kind of post one question. This is optional. This is not a graded assignment. But if you do have some issues with kind of wondering what's happening or getting an idea, like for example, Bridget asked about who's Prince Aeschylus. So if you have need some clarification about certain characters or certain lines, that's what the questions is for. So what I'll do for you is I'll post Act 2 questions, and then when you go ahead and read through Act 2, then you can go ahead and post any questions there. Don't feel like you need to write, I have none. Jonathan, fantastic job. You don't have any questions. You don't have to post. I'm not checking to see who's posting and who isn't. It's just that I don't want to miss anything in terms of what you guys are struggling with, and I want to make sure I address that in our weekly video. So to go ahead and give you guys a little bit of a background here in terms of Romeo and Juliet and what we're looking for. So one area that Bridget asked was, one area that Bridget asked was, who is Prince Aeschylus? So if you go ahead and turn to page 376 in your textbook, there is a character with a short little bio, I guess you could say, that is introduced in each of our acts. So for example, that goes down, it says Paris is a young count. He's the kinsman. He's related to the prince. Aeschylus is the Prince of Verona, so he's Prince Aeschylus. There's Lord Montague, Lord Capulet, so on and so forth. So they go ahead and give you a little bit of a bio in terms of who people are. So if you're ever confused about a certain character, you can always go back here and get an idea about who they are. And this is a character list for all the characters throughout the entire play. For example, like the apothecary is not going to be used until Act 5. But with that being said, they still have him listed as an overall character here. So all the characters that will be used in the play are there. Opening up, the prologue gives us on page 377 background to what this play is about. It actually tells you everything that is going to be happening in the play. Not only does it tell you that the two households who are both alike in dignity in fair Verona, where we lay our scene, it gives you the setting. It tells you the characters who are going to be involved. It talks about the star-crossed lovers who take their life, and it tells you about the ending of the feud between the families. It also goes on at line 11 to 12. Line 12 is now the 2 hours traffic of our stage. It tells you how long the play is going to be. And it tells you that if you're patient, they will fill in all the details. So the prologue really gives you a synopsis of the entire play. Some questions that people had to ask were about, why are these families fighting? It's an ancient grudge. It's two families that have hated each other for, generations after generations. They don't give a specific reason why, but they do definitely dislike each other, which is going to make the love between Romeo and Juliet so difficult because the families have a built-in rivalry. A couple of other things. It opens up with Samson and Gregory. Samson and Gregory are not main characters. They are servants. They work for the House of Capulet. It's really just an opening scene that sets the stage for how much the families hate each other. Even the people who work for the families hate each other. And they end up, kind of wanting to go back and forth. At one point, they start talking about line 45. No, sir, I do not bite my thumb at you, sir. Biting your thumb would be the equivalent of giving the middle finger to somebody. That would be fighting words, so to speak, or a fighting gesture. So right when they start biting their thumb at one another, it is time for them to fight. Benvolio gets introduced. Benvolio is very much an important character. He's related to Romeo. He's on Romeo's side. He is probably the nicest, most kind person in the entire play, always looking to be a diplomat. Tybalt is introduced. Some people had some questions about Tybalt. Tybalt is a very important character, very much an antagonist throughout the play. He is on the Capulet side. He is related to Juliet, is a cousin. His uncle would be Lord Capulet. And Tybalt wants to fight anybody at any time, especially if their last name is Romeo. So Tybalt always wants to go ahead and start problems. They also introduce in scene 1 the parents, both the Montagues and the Capulets. They start talking about how they hate each other. They bring the prince in. The prince has a long monologue where he is explaining to everybody that if there's any fighting, henceforth, it's off with your head. And that will be the punishment for any fighting. I'm tired of policing your grudge, and I'm having problems with you guys, and that's it. So he makes a final ruling. Some questions that students asked were, why did Lord Capulet not kick Romeo out when he ended up crashing the party later on in the act? And that's because of this moment here when the prince said, no more fighting between your families or off with your head. We later on in scene 1, around page 381, we introduce Romeo. We find out that he is kind of creepily obsessed with this girl. Her name is Rosaline. Romeo is very emotional. His father wakes up. He doesn't want to talk to him. He sneaks out of the house. He runs into the woods. He's always crying. Romeo is a very emotional boy. He's about 18 years old, 19 years old, and all he wants to do is find a girl and be in love with her. And currently that has to do with Rosaline. So Benvolio and Romeo have, a good little talk. Romeo is, love stricken, and Benvolio is trying to kind of snap him out of it. They move over into scene two. Scene two introduces Paris. Paris is an important character, but more indirectly because of the things that Paris wants to do and how he affects Juliet's life, but he is not one of our main characters. Paris, from a different family, very esteemed, wants to marry Juliet and is going to court her by talking to her father. Some people ask some questions about, is arranged marriages a common thing? And during that time period, yes, arranged marriages, especially of esteemed families, would be a common thing. Lord Capulet thinks this is an amazing idea. He says, you need to go ahead and meet my daughter, and let's have ourselves a party. And he gets out the servant and says, here is a list. Go ahead and invite all these people to my party and walk around town and let them know, because I want Paris and Juliet to meet and start their relationship. The servant says, great, I'll do that for you, sir. Unfortunately, the servant can't read. He's a lower class person in the town, and reading was only be done for people who were of high esteem. He finds Romeo. Some people ask some questions about Romeo's status in terms of their family. Romeo's family, the Montagues, would be on equal status with the Capulets. It's not one's rich and the other's poor. They're both rich. So Romeo runs into the servant. The servant asks him, can you help me out with this list? He says, great. Romeo's a really nice guy. The servant says, hey, thank you for helping me out. Why don't you come to the party and we'll have some wine together? So Romeo says, fantastic. Let's go crash a Capulet party. And Benvolio is going to join him. Scene three is when they finally introduce Juliet. Juliet, her mother, the nurse, all very important characters, obviously Juliet being one of our main characters. The nurse has a very strong role throughout the play. Some people feel the nurse is annoying. I think she's annoying. The nurse is definitely obsessed with Juliet, doesn't have her own children, has kind of an odd relationship with her husband, has cared for Juliet from birth, and that the nurse is slightly obsessed with her and trying to always take care of her. And they talk about, we're going to have a party, and you're going to meet Paris, and he wants to marry you, and he's an amazing person. And Juliet is very much against marriage. She doesn't want to have an arranged marriage. She wants to be an independent thinker. And she doesn't want to have her father or Paris be kind of pushed upon her. So she's pretty upset. But her mother is kind of like, no, like, we're having this party and you're going to be there anyway. Scene four moves into the introduction of Mercutio. Now, Mercutio would be a fun-loving, high testosterone jock kind of a guy, always goofing around, good looking, very much wants to be the center of attention, and he loves to give Romeo a hard time. So Mercutio is a very important character. The homies are Romeo, Benvolio, and Mercutio, and they are always together. It's their little group, and they're always kind of goofing off and having a good time. Romeo is being very dramatic, going on and on and on about how he's in love with Rosaline. Mercutio is like, hey, there's plenty of fish in the sea, and you need to kind of get over this. And so let's go to this party for the Capulets, and let's go have a good time. Let's go see if we can find some new girls here. Scene 5 is the last scene in our act. It's at the party. Lord Capulet enters the party, nice, big, and grand, welcomes all the guests. People are dancing. They're having a good time. If you're single, you'd be wearing a mask, so it'd be very easy to not recognize Romeo. Tybalt does. He sees Romeo from a distance, recognizes Mercutio and Benvolio, and he immediately wants to fight. So I think a common question was, at one point, Lord Capulet calls him a saucy boy, and that would be the equivalent of like, you're fired up, you are ready to fight, you are excited, and you need to calm down. Stop acting like you own the place here. Don't you remember that the prince has told us no fighting, no more of this, and we need to end it. Plus, the Lord Capulet uh, tells Tybalt that he's not even doing anything wrong. He's just here. So let's just let it go. Tybalt can't stand it. I mean, Tybalt wants to fight Romeo at any cost, especially him being a Montague, about the same age. And so Tybalt's going to hold on to this moment, and it's going to be his driving force throughout the play in terms of wanting to get after Romeo. But Romeo starts dancing. He ends up meeting this beautiful girl, does not know who she is. The mask is hiding her identity, and they start dancing. Romeo is immediately in love. He completely forgets about Rosaline. All he knows is that this is one of the most beautiful girls I've ever seen in my life, and I want her. He immediately is dancing. He lays on some pretty good lines here, around lines. Let's see, 92 through 109. Romeo is laying the smack to make sure that he goes ahead and courts Juliet as quickly as possible. Don't worry, he has some of the greatest lines of all time, and he moves into kissing her. She backs up a little bit. At line 107, she says, "Then have my lips the sin that they have took." Basically saying that you have committed sin. Romeo comes back with "Sin from my lips, O trespass sweetly urged. Give me my sin again," which is one of the all-time great lines. Kisses her again as they're making out in the middle of the party. And then Juliet comes back when that little makeout session is finished and says, "You kiss by the book." So Romeo and Juliet have immediately fallen in love. It goes into the love at first sight mantra that the two of them have. And then at that point, that's when the nurse realizes, oh my gosh, like this is Romeo. She divulges that she's a Capulet. Juliet finds out that he's a Montague. They realize that whatever love that they have for each other is cursed, and that they don't know how they're going to be able to actually continue with their relationship. And that closes up Act One. So overall, it introduces the scene of our play, it introduces our main characters, and it introduces our main problem. Our problem is that Romeo and Juliet have fallen in love, and there is an established rivalry between the two of their families, which is going to cause many of their problems. Hopefully, you were able to get a good idea about what Act One is about by listening to my recap here. If you have questions, continue to email me. If you have questions about Romeo and Juliet, continue to use the Act One questions section. Next week on Monday, I will post the Act Two audio file. I'll post the Act Two questions. I'll post the Act Two assignment. And then on Wednesday of next week, I'll post the Act Two notes. And I'll continue to kind of try and stay on that schedule to keep us kind of moving along. And like I said, any questions that you guys have about understanding the play, things that I didn't address, please feel free to email me. And hopefully I'm able to see you guys sooner than later. Have a great day.